Hello, and thanks for having me. I'm drinking tea right now because, as I'm sure you can hear, I've got almost no voice. I've had a bad case of the flu, which is one reason I can't be with you this evening in Poland. But it's a great honor to be asked to speak to you, and I hope that through this video I can give you some things to think about and talk about, and maybe some impetus to do some stuff differently in your organizations after this session. My name is Adam Lawrence, and I work as what many people call a service designer. I don't often use those words in my practice. I talk about service innovation, customer experience, or human experience. I talk about helping people change the way they work together to produce more value or to work in a way which creates things which make sense for their customers and for their colleagues and also for the world around them. I'm the co-author of a book called This is Service Design Doing. This is what it looks like. It came out just this January, and it's a co-production between myself, three co-authors, and 306 other writers who contributed to, I think, 580 pages of goodness. It was a fantastic project to be involved in, and if you're one of the people who volunteered to help with that, thank you very much. I'm also well known for the Global Service Jam, which I co-initiated with my colleague Marcus Hormes back in 2011. It's the world's biggest service innovation event and takes place every year, once a year, in around 100 cities worldwide on the same weekend, where several thousand people are jamming along to the same theme. That means they get a theme on Friday evening and then have 48 hours to think about that theme, look for problems behind it, form teams around interesting problems, hit the streets, do some quick and dirty guerrilla research, generate ideas, and then immediately challenge those ideas and turn them into prototypes which they can take back on the street and test again with users and real human beings. At the end of the weekend, they should have a completed prototype, an interactive prototype of a wholly new service, which they share throughout the weekend under Creative Commons licensing with the rest of the world. So those prototypes can be used for research and for learning by other people interested in how we work together. The commercial rights, of course, belong to the jammers. We have 3 jams a year, actually. There's the Global Service Jam, the Global Sustainability Jam, and coming up very soon is the Global Gov Jam, which is a midweek event in the first week in June aimed at public services. So if you'd like to try a jam, then please go along to one of the local Global Gov Jam events. Right now we have one in Poland, it's in Ostrów, but there are great jamming communities also in Warsaw, in Łódź, in other towns in Poland. So check out the global jams, and I'm sure you can learn a lot there. What I want to talk to you about today is the need for change. And when I'm not jamming or writing, I run with my colleague Marcus an agency who helps organizations all over the world change the way they work and run projects to be more, if you like, human-centered, to be more reality-based, so working more with experiments, with prototypes, with research, instead of with PowerPoint and somebody's opinion, and which through that helps them create better products and services which people value and are happy to buy. So we hope it leads to business success as well. This is a new way of working, and I know you're talking about that very much in your community. So I'd like to spend some time with you talking about the changes that I've seen in organizations. And I'm not a strategian, I'm a tactical person. So I don't talk about the high-level strategic stuff, I talk about the low-level activities, what people are actually doing, how they're behaving. What I do find, though, is you can look at details of this behavior and you can apply that to the large strategy as well. So whatever your strategy is, if it's not reflected in the behavior of your people, you have a problem. And if the behavior of your people is not in your strategy, then you also have a problem. So I think those two things are very clearly linked. What we've seen in the last few years, of course, has been a huge increase in the importance of what most people call customer experience. Cheers. Now, I prefer the term human experience because I think it's equally important to engage not just customers or users, but also the people who are delivering and creating the value that your organization offers. So that could be staff, stakeholders, partners. I think it's also important to consider the needs of your non-customers because they could be tomorrow's customers or they could pressure you into doing things which are not in your interest unless you consider their needs. And of course, we're in a whole ecosystem which includes the planet as well. So, what are all the needs around the value that we create, and how can they all be bound into that value? Now, customer experience has become so important as we've seen how many companies have been successful by focusing on this. And if we look at studies by people like Temkin and Forrester and these other great companies, we do find that it seems that organizations which are good at what they call customer experience, I call human experience, do overperform. They do much better than the average company, and they even seem to do better than organizations which are operationally excellent. So there's an interesting lesson, I think, to be learned there. Of course, it's best to have both. It's fantastic if you can have great customer or human focus and also fantastic operations to back that up, because the two go hand in hand, and it's very hard to fulfill the promise that you make with your customer experience if your operations are not marching in step with that. So we've seen the huge growth in the importance of customer experience, and that's mostly been driven, I think, by social media. Customers are simply much more powerful. They have much more opportunity to choose these days. It's often easier for me to buy something from China than to walk out of the house and buy it just a few streets across the town. I just have one click and it arrives. And I'm often happy to take a little bit of loss of quality and so on to get that. But often I get fantastic stuff also buying that way. Also, when I am pleased or not pleased with a service or a product which I've consumed, I'm much more powerful in how I can tell people about that. So the power of social media to expand my voice, to amplify my voice and let me tell people how happy or unhappy I am, means that every individual experience has the opportunity to be business making or business breaking for your organization. If we get it badly wrong, and if someone tells enough people and that information perhaps goes viral in the worst case, then that can cost us, in some cases, billions of dollars. We've seen that, for example, with United Airlines. So we have this focus on customer experience, and the answer, I think, that people are finding to the new challenges around that, around meeting customers' needs and understanding them better, is around design. Now, I don't like using the word design very much in my work because it confuses people. They think design means what something looks like. They think it's the aesthetics. And people often say to me, I like the design. And I say, I don't understand what you mean. You weren't there during the design. What you mean is you like the aesthetics of this. And design is a fantastic toolkit for co-creatively addressing and solving problems, and especially for understanding the problem better. And so today we have things like design thinking and service design, or even as some call it now, service design thinking, which are everywhere. If you open any business book or management magazine, you'll find probably design thinking, perhaps service design mentioned somewhere in there. And this welcome new attention, of course, brings its own problems with it. It's the problem of buzzwords. People hear design thinking, they think, I can do that, and they start a small agency. Some of them are fantastic, some of them are really, really awful, and what they're doing is nothing like design thinking. They are taking the very obvious, trivial side of what is basically a mechanism for understanding the world and changing it, and they turn it into a few fun workshops of sticking post-its. And people say, yeah, we used design thinking in that project. And I ask them how, and they say, we had a 2-day workshop as part of a 3-month project. To which I can only say, no, you didn't do design thinking. You had maybe an ideation workshop or just a bit of team building. So if you are worried about the terms like design thinking or service design, just don't use them. Talk about creating value. Talk about cooperation, talk about project management, talk about whatever it is that your customer or your client needs to hear to be able to work well. My voice is going. I've got 3 rules that I tend to use in my work. I took them from the way I work in theatre. I'm also a theatre director and actor. And I'd like to talk about them with you for the next few minutes, and I think they'll be useful for you going forward. And those 3 rules are rules that I call the rules of rehearsal, because we use them in the rehearsal room when we're creating a new theatre play. Theatre for me is a fascinating work form. It's a very pragmatic, but very creative, very down-to-earth way of working. And when I talk about theatre, I don't think about the stage so much. I think much more about the rehearsal room, because that's where the value is actually created. That's where an ensemble of people with different talents gets together to figure out how can we make this script work on our stage with our technology, with our ensemble, and for our audience. And that's just like how organizations, for example, think how can they make a new process or new technology fit their capabilities around their people, their resources, and of course their audience, which means their customers. So we can learn a lot from theatre, I think, and I find it a very useful source of inspiration and of tools in my work. So the first of my 3 rules of rehearsal is use what you have. Use what you have. This is one of my favourite rules. What it means is whoever you have in the room, whatever resources you have, whatever people you have, whatever knowledge you have, whatever permissions you have, it's enough to get started. It's probably not enough to finish. And it's very important to understand in service design thinking that very often you must accept that the answer is not in the room with you. It's not about waking the creativity of your team and finding some brilliant flash of lightning which is in one of your heads. It's about getting out of the room and working with real users and real customers to find out things you don't know yet. But that doesn't mean you can't make a start. And what I love about design thinking is basically the idea that you can stand up and get going immediately. You can work very low level. You can work under the radar. You can work without others knowing that you're using this method by simply adopting some of the principles of design thinking and getting away from your desk and doing them. So you can do very basic research by friends, fools, and family. Phone up some people you know, talk to colleagues in the building over lunch, find out what they're struggling with, find out what they're trying to do, find out who they're trying to be. And that can be a fantastic first step for research. Just literally walk out of the building. You might not want to do this using your own brand if you're a large organization, but as a private citizen, talk to people. You can do fantastic research in taxis. You can do fantastic research in cafes just by talking to the people around you. Now, of course, there are going to be some biases in this. You're going to naturally go to people who are probably quite like you. But it's a start, and later on you can make a much more conscious effort to reach out to people unlike you, perhaps extreme users or people in different social or financial situations than you are. So that first rule really is just to use what you have. Whatever you have lying around is good enough for prototyping. You don't need a big fancy prototyping lab. You don't need a big fancy innovation suite. Those things have their uses because they show people that the organization believes in this and is willing to show its love by spending money. But it's a very bad idea to think that you need an innovation suite or that you need a special room to do design thinking, to do great innovation, to be human-centered. If that was true, we'd all be in big trouble. This has to work at everybody's desk. So use what you have is my first rule of rehearsals. It means get up, try things out, and that actually frees your imagination. Look, imagine we're working on a digital service that runs through my phone, perhaps an app, yeah? Now, I could use my real phone and play around with that, but that might slow me down at the beginning. Why don't I just take a pen and pretend that's my phone, and that can do anything I want it to do. It really frees my imagination. So getting started quickly and having a free imagination to do that means use what you have. This has one real practical advantage. We know that when people are running innovation projects, there seems to be a strong correlation between the success of those projects and the number of iterations they have, the number of loops. How often did they stop and say, this is not really working, what have we learned? And take a step back, or 2 steps back, or 3 steps back, and start again. The more often you stop, think, realign, or step back and start again, the more successful you are. So if I'm using what I have, it means I start sooner. I don't wait for the right people, the right resources, but I start my learning loops really, really early on. The second rule I'd like to talk to you about is what I call play seriously. Play seriously. Now, I'm an actor, and when I have a hard evening at work in the theatre, I call it play. I say, I'm playing tonight, see you later. And we call what we do in theatre a play. It doesn't mean it's not really, really hard work, and work and play are not opposites. When we are playful, we are superpowered. When we are playful, we avoid lots of the problems which are linked to change. Because we're in a playful mindset, we're more likely to try something new. We're more likely to have a wider range of ideas, and maybe even more ideas as well. We're less likely to hurt ourselves emotionally or physically. Play makes us superpowered. But what most of us are not good at is focusing that playfulness in a serious way. It means that when we are being playful to be creative, we cannot afford to be irresponsible. We can be divergent, we can open up our options, we can certainly laugh. But then we have to focus down and think about, right, what about this is useful? What is possible? What can we do? What's on brand? What's within our technological capabilities? What is on target for this project? And then when we've focused on those things, we open up again by getting playful again. Now, when we get into very creative modes and we have actually made something new, we have an idea, then we start getting in trouble because we fall in love with our ideas much too quickly. We trust them much too much. And unfortunately, psychologists like Kahneman will tell us that if an idea is genuinely new, we don't know if it's going to work or not. And nobody can tell us if it will work or not. So what we have to do is we have to modify our playfulness. We have to use it strategically and then make the effort to filter it and prove it. So if you're building some prototype that you're really in love with, ask yourself, how are we going to test this? Use a scientific mentality to say, right, if this works and I put it in front of people, they will do this and this and they will understand this. They will be able to do that and they will not do this. And then when you've predicted those outcomes, get out there, get your prototype in front of people. Don't talk to them about it. Don't present it to them. Give it to them. Let them use it. Give them the minimum information that they need. And then see what happens. And it's advisable to get somebody else in with you, someone who's not in your little bubble, who's not in love with your prototype, who will be much more realistic about how users are getting on with it. Look them in the eye, your colleagues, and then really see, can we say this is actually working? Or are we learning instead something more useful? We're learning new questions that we can go out and do more research around, maybe develop more prototypes or change this one. So when we're being playful, we must be serious. It means using that energy in creative bursts, and in those times letting ourselves go crazy sometimes, but then getting real and getting focused and thinking, what are the experiments that we can do to challenge what we're doing? If it's just an idea you have right now, one of the best things you can do is turn it very, very quickly into a prototype. Try and build the thing. And if you find you have real trouble building it, maybe your idea wasn't as good as you thought it was. So that's my second rule, and it's play seriously. The third rule I want to talk to you about is my favorite, and it's called doing, not talking. Doing, not talking. Now, this is a fun thing to do, but it's also got a very serious background. The idea behind doing, not talking is that the voice channel, the word channel, whether it's written or spoken, is really overserved. We use it too much in our work. And that gives an imbalance in our organizations. It means the people who are powerful speakers and powerful writers become the readers, the leaders of the organization. But they might not be the only ones with great insights or great knowledge. And words are treacherous, they're slippery. It's very easy for us to talk all day and nod and think we understand each other, and then go away and find when we start doing something, we're doing totally different things. And we say, what are you doing? I'm doing what we agreed to do. So try and leave words behind now and again. If you want to create ideas, don't sit down and talk about it. Separate up, scribble stuff, come back after a while with your scribbles. If you have two ideas, don't sit down and talk about which one is best. Separate, build some prototypes, or take turns to build prototypes, one after the other, and see which of the ideas actually works when you put it in front of people. If you want to communicate what you're doing or what you're working on, yes, you could talk about it, or much better, let somebody use it. Let somebody experience it. So think about ways that you can move away from doing and to move away from talking and towards doing in your work. Get up and try things out. Use what you have and play seriously while you are doing things. Then reflect on what you've done and say, what did we learn from that? And how does that help us in our next iteration? Now, doing, not talking sounds quite a lightweight thing. But it's actually quite hard, because what you're telling people to do is you're telling them to stop looking backwards. When we are sitting around talking, we're usually sharing our opinions, we're sharing our expertise, and we're sharing our experience. What we're saying, though, in design thinking is, well, opinions and expertise are great, but that was yesterday. What's happening today? The world is moving too fast to rely on outdated authority. And that's a very hard thing for somebody to hear, because our own value is based on our expertise and on our experience. So if someone comes along and says, that's useless, that's a very hard thing to say. And of course, it's not useless, but it's only part of the question. It's only part of what we need, looking backwards, but also looking forwards. So don't underestimate how hard it is for people to stop talking, to stop sharing their experience and opinions. And instead of fighting that, try and incorporate that in a new way of moving forward. So those are the three things I wanted to talk to you about. Use what you have, play seriously, and doing, not talking. And if you adopt those at any scale in your organization, even just in the next meeting, in the next workshop, in the next training session for a few people, I'm sure you'll find you discover new things that you weren't finding with a more traditional linear way of working. There's nothing wrong with the old ways of working. They're very valuable, but we find more and more in today's fast-changing world that we need to at least try new ones and enlarge our toolkit so we add new ways of working to those old ones. I want to leave you with two quotes. One is by my team around the book This is Service Design Doing, and one is from one of my favorite innovation experts. So my quote, to go with my 3 rules from the This is Service Design Doing crew, is this one. If you're doing design thinking or service design, or however you call this thing that we all do, if you only do 2 things, do prototyping and do research. And if you only do 1 thing, do research. Get out of the building. Get away from what you think you know and confront yourself with reality. And the second quote is from Michael Schrager, or Michael Schrager. I'm not sure how he pronounces his name. He's a very interesting guy. You should Google him. And he's a research fellow at MIT. And he is also or was, I believe, with the previous government, an advisor for the American government on innovation in national security. So a very serious job he's been doing there. He's written some fantastic books, which I really recommend to you. And I love the subtitle of one of his books. And it's become my motto, if you like, for this kind of work. And I encourage you all to adopt it. What Michael Schrage says is, you don't need good ideas. You need cheap experiments. And if you think about, where can I do cheap experiments? Where can I do little tests, little bits of research? How can I get in front of real users, real customers, real colleagues, and try things with them? I think you'll be on a very good road to really rocking service design thinking, or however you call this thing that we do. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. I'm sorry about my voice. Thanks to the crew around Cartagena who helped us work this all out. Were patient with me getting the video to them because I was just simply too sick to do it yesterday. So I'm sorry it's very last minute. Have a fantastic evening and reach out to me anytime. I'm easiest to reach on Twitter, where I'm at Adam St. John, or you can also find me at adam@servicedesign.de. Look for me on LinkedIn, look for me on Facebook. It's always great to hear from you. Have a fantastic evening. Thank you very much.